Hello?
Hi there, is this John?
Yes, this is John. Who's calling?
Hey John, it's just Kai here.
What can I do for you?
Yeah, I'm just calling about a recent ad reply to one of our posts regarding AI automation. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, I do recall seeing something about that, but to be honest, I'm not sure if it's something I really need right now.
Yeah, I completely understand that, John. Can I just ask, why would you have replied to that in the first place? Just to clarify.
Well, I was curious about how AI automation could potentially help streamline some of our processes, but honestly, I'm not sure if it's the right fit for our business.
Okay, no worries. I completely understand. Many people think that AI doesn't really help their business to begin with, and then after they've had a chat with us, they understand the process and the potential that AI can have in their system. So, would you be keen to have a call around that so we can just no obligation talk about what we can do for your business, and if it's not ideal for us to work with you, then no strings attached, no sweat. How about that?
I appreciate the offer, Kai, but honestly, I'm just really busy right now. I don't think I have the time to dive into something like this at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. So, what if I told you that the 30 minutes that you spend with us the potential to, streamline your process and save you multiple hours per week, and all that you had to put in initially was that 30-minute consultation. Would that be interesting to you?
That does sound intriguing, but I'm still not sure if the return would happen quickly enough to justify the time spent. We're trying to be very cautious with our resources right now.
Okay, well, thanks for taking the call anyway. I guess I'll go about my day making money.
All right. All right, Kai. Thanks for reaching out. Best of luck with everything.
All right, so that was the lead follow-up um, setting. Now let's try to do an objection handling call. So I've chosen to be calling someone in the dominant scale of the um, disk profiling. So this is going to be hard. And this conversation is going to start from the point that the salesperson asks to sell their services. Based off of everything that we've talked about, would it be reasonable for us to start today and get you on board with the AI automation services?
I'm interested in the idea of AI automation services, but honestly, I'm not sure it's something I really need right now. Our current processes seem to be working just fine.
Yeah, I completely understand that, John. And to be honest with you, this is something that we tell all of our other prospects when they're just about to onboard through our process. And this is what they realize afterwards. They've gone through everything that they have always needed the AI in their processes, and they're all the more better for it. So, I guess could you clarify why you wouldn't need it in the first place?
I hear you, but even if it could be useful, I'm just too busy right now to even think about implementing something new. We're swamped, and I can't afford to take my focus off what we're already doing.
Yeah, I completely understand that as well. And listen, we work with plenty of people who are also swamped in their work, and they manage to get the best results um, of all time, So um, if you think it's a good idea to partner up, then we can 100% do that. What do you think?
Before we set anything up, I need to be upfront. My biggest concern is the time it'll take to implement this. If it's going to pull me or my team away from our current priorities for too long, it's just not going to work. How do you address that?
That's a pretty fair point to address. I would say that I still think you should work with us.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I need a more concrete plan for how this won't disrupt my team's time. I don't think this is the right fit for us right now.
Okay, cool. Oh, okay, hung up on me. Awesome. All right, so you can see that after those couple of calls, we can go to the statistics tab, in here and see the results from the past 2 calls. We haven't closed anyone, so that's why the conversion rate is 0. In terms of script adherence, we got a score of 20 out of 100. And we got talk to listen ratio. There's a few more, weekly statistics of our calls. The average call was 4.3 minutes. And I can also consult with a personalized AI coach regarding these past calls. So if I go into the daily tab and I say I attach my call data, I can then consult with it based on my particular results. And it's telling me, to work on objection handling, some actionable steps. In terms of my script adherence, it's bringing up that one time that I scored 20, and actionable steps to help me out there as well. And this is coming off of 2 hours of Alex Hormozi sales training that I put into a static knowledge base, and the other knowledge base is coming off the dynamic data results that it gets from me. And this is the hub where I can choose all of my calls and the scripts to be analyzed when I do those calls, so I can go through that process all over again. So what you've just seen is a fully functional sales app that allows salespeople to practice and improve on their calls using their sales skills, and also freeing up time for sales managers or coaches to focus on higher leverage activities at the same time. Today, I will show you how I built this using Lovable, Supabase, Make.com, Retail AI, and Relevance AI, so that by the end, you too will have a good idea of how to make and implement these tools together to create a powerful app. And so first I'm going to explain to you the functionality of the app and how it works, and then I'll walk you through the front end of the Lovable, and then the back end tools, which we'll get into at the end of the video. So let's get started. Alright, so this app that I call Salesy works exactly like this. It's got a few simple functionalities, but the tools behind it I will make it more complex so it can do everything simultaneously. So let me explain to you what that means. Once a salesperson actually lands on the practice page, which is where they make the practice calls, they pick a script that they're going to use, which they can upload to the app. They can then pick a scenario of a call that they're going to use, so whether it be objection handling or lead follow-up or cold call, as you saw in the demo. And then they can pick an AI avatar of the type of person that they can call, and of those people, it can also be randomized by the AI. So it can do that for you. And then all of this information gets sent to a Make.com scenario that creates these dynamic variables to then implement into the AI. So I put down here that it fetches the user content from the Supabase, which is where we store these requests, generates a scenario and the person, and then creates the assistant by making an API request to Retail, which is where we handle the phone call and we can try to close or practice other sales skills on the call as well. Once that call is done, it then gets sent to an analyzer agent on Relevance AI that looks at various amounts of data to evaluate our call. So that's script adherence, talk to listen ratio, script adherence, objections handle, and whether or not I converted the AI in the first place. Once we have all of these, data points, we can send it back to the Supabase, which is then going to host our call results, which is then going to be displayed on the Lovable app in front of the statistics page for the salesperson to see. So now jumping onto Lovable, I'll show you exactly how I was able to do this over, a series of days. So this wasn't necessarily a very fast and immediate request that I sent to Lovable and made all at once. You can see here my first prompt, which I outlined the purpose of the app, which is for sales teams to practice their sales calls, and then some user functionality. But essentially I didn't have everything set in stone, which meant that I had to go through this back and forth to really outline exactly what I wanted. And again, through considering that I changed my mind in a few times to see how things will work the best way, it's a lot of back and forth, right? But the main thing that I want to touch on here is this initial prompt, which clearly outlined my main idea of the app, which is where the user picks a sales scenario. It confirms the sales scenario by calling that phone number. The AI agent on Make.com is triggered. So this is the Retail agent that Make.com just triggers. It uses the practice to either close, objection handle, or practice the sales lines. And then once the call finishes, the user receives multiple data points from the AI to give feedback on. And then so I gave it some of these pages, these sections of what the app was going to incorporate. I included the navigator, which was going to have all of these in. And then I kind of go into a bit of detail regarding the practice page, the choosing profile, so kind of the user walkthrough of using the app. So you can see here I talk about the user choosing a specific profile, and I use disk profiling. So if you understood what was going on before, I clicked on the specific scenario, which was lead follow-up and then the objection handling scenarios. The two calls had different sort of feels to them because that conversation happened at different points of this sales call that we created. And on top of that, it was personalized to the user profile that was chosen. So in my case, I chose a dominant profile on the disk profile and someone in their 40s, which made the call a bit harder, to be honest. And then you can see here how I have the make call functionality of it, the statistics page. So that whole section has a toggle of daily, weekly, and monthly buttons so they can see their progress over time. Seeing examples of the image that I provided up here. And then the button to see more for the specific results, which is where the user can see the talk to listen ratio, script adherence, and whatnot. And then you can see that this is the point where I actually had the idea of incorporating the assistant coach, which would help the salesperson to evaluate and give advice on some of their calls. And this is the request that I just put it in from OpenAI. And from that point on, we just refined and again went through this back and forth of refining that assistant coach that was going to be trained on that data. But overall, you can see the way that I built this app came from very chunked up conceptual ideas of what I thought it would look like, and then refined it by going back and forth with Lovable. And that can be quite tiring, especially if you're not on the pro plan of Lovable, which I am. So just to help you out and give you a better guide while you try to make something similar on the free plan, which I would advise you be on the paid plan. But even if you are on the free plan, this is essentially the general idea of the app, some of the functionalities and some of the specific workflows around it that I'll leave for free in the description below, so you can take this and apply it into your own Lovable interface. If you're not familiar with Lovable, it'll look something like this, where you open up a tab and you can talk to this just as though it were ChatGPT or just as though it were a full stack developer, and just a chat that you have going back and forth to refine and create the perfect software. But you can have a look at this in your own time. It includes like the main pillars of the app and the functionality of it. So if you read through this, it'll have everything for you, which should cut a huge chunk of time if you're trying to make something similar for yourself. And you may have seen some of what the app looks like, but this is the full walkthrough of the front end. So this is the script library where you can upload a whole bunch of your own scripts, which get analyzed by the Relevance AI agent further down the track. You then fall into this practice hub here, which is where you can pick that script and then pick the type of call that you're wanting to make. But yeah, essentially what we're doing is we're saving and holding on to each of these selections from the user. So when they call that phone number, it triggers a separate automation, which is this one. So my camera just decided to stop working, so I'm filming this again. But this is the automation that it triggers, and we are pulling in data from the Supabase regarding those requests that the user made. And so just before I go into this, I'll show you the salesy backend in terms of selections that the user makes within that practice calls. So you can see this is the practice calls tab. Each of these are a practice call that I made. So each of these selections, what we're doing is we are saving each of these selections to this table. And then once we actually press that phone number button, we are triggering in a retail AI inbound webhook, which triggers an automation. It connects us to a call, pulling in the data that is saved over here, and creating the dynamic agent, which we can then practice our call with. So just a quick overview of this. You have the practice calls tab, the call results, which is then updated by a separate agent. So it's the same logic, but happening backwards, right? Instead of us getting results from this calls tab here, then we are updating that call results tab with the data that is created outside of the actual Lovable Salesy platform. On top of that, we have the scripts that is created for each designated user. So you can see here that the script that I uploaded became a file URL, which we also pull in from that data. You can see in the practice course tab, we pick the script file that the user has. And all of this is like all the profiles. I'm not going to show you that. What I will show you is the database that shows how this whole thing works by pulling designated data. So the script file, the profile data, and all of the results and whatnot. But then under the umbrella of a designated user. So that's how this can work at scale, with multiple people having their own results and scripts and whatever else you want to add. So anyway, this information that we get from the practice call tab is then triggered in this automation here. Once we call that button, it triggers this automation because of retail, and we can see that we get this information from retail. We get the call, the phone number that is calling the inbound webhook. We are then comparing that inbound phone number to the Supabase profiles tab, and we are looking for that identifier. So if that phone number exists in the profiles tab, which and all authenticated users have in the sales app, if that exists, we can then make a GET request to that tab that I just showed you, the practice calls, and then we can pass that content so we can know exactly what that user actually asked for. And you can see here it's pulling the data from my objection handling call. So picked out that it was an objection handling call for a dominant this profile in this age range, and you get the point now. Now once it gets to this point, because it was an objection handling coach, it goes through this path here. And then what these GPT models do is it creates that disk profile. So a GPT that makes a description that expands that disk profile, which is then dynamically put into the retail agent, which I'll show you in a minute. But it's saying, okay, so since it's dominant, it's saying you tend to be more assertive and decisive than others, often displaying strong leadership qualities and goal-oriented mindset. So it's giving it that background, right? And I won't get into it too much. And then what this is doing is it's creating that main concern for that AI to then be closed. So if you were listening in properly, it was giving me a whole bunch of, time objections, authority objections, and then it came up with its main concern, which was not part of the smoke screens that it was giving me, but the main concern that was throwing that AI off of buying my services, right? And so this is listed out randomly through this AI module here, which again is passed onto the objection handling coach. And this route is pretty much the same as this one, except for this one creates a background of how their day went. So it says, today your day was neutral, you managed to get through your work tasks without major issues, but the morning started off, So it's this kind of detail that we are instructing the retail agent to not really live up to that realistically, but just say, consider it in the responses that you make along with the type of person that you are to make that call more realistic. So let me show you how exactly these modules work. So this is just a copy without my API keys and whatnot, but the idea is the same. That webhook is getting triggered. This is the phone number. It should be this one here. So this is the phone number that we're searching for. Once it comes up with the result saying, yes, it's true, that phone number is in the profiles tab, we get that selection. And what we're doing here is we're making an API call to that Supabase project, and we're getting all the results under that user ID within the last minute. So the reason I did that is because if not, it would get all of the results of all time. So this narrows it down to the most recent request, which we then get the data that we parse, and then we can map into the different routes as you saw before. This is the GPT module where I ask it to make kind of expand on the disk profile that it is given. So I say, be very short, be specific, and don't exaggerate with it, because we are feeding it to an AI persona, so it has to be pretty realistic, And then once it gets to this webhook response on both of these ends, we are filling in the dynamic variables for that agent call on the inbound part of retail. And you can see that along with that, we send as metadata the script file and the user ID, which we are using later on in the process. So now we're here in the retail part of things where we are calling the designated agent for the particular call. Now this is the cold call and lead follow-up agent, which you can see is the same in these two routes. It's just one agent that is diversified for the different variables that the user picked. So I'm giving it quite an extensive role. This is not going to be just a random persona. I'm giving it the overarching idea of this, saying that it's a test subject for the Salesy app and it's actually a coach made to live up to persona and help train the salesperson with their calls. So that's what I specify in this, and then the specific step is kind of reinforcing that with a step-by-step process. I give it a very detailed example here of what an input would look like in the dynamic variables that I'll show you down there, and then what the conversation would look like as a result of this. So this is pretty much 80% of the prompt in just a very small section. So you can see here these double curly brackets. When the webhook is completed in that automation, when we get that response webhook, these variables become the responses from the GPT or the responses that the user selected from the Lovable front end in the first place. So for example, this will become dominant if the user picked dominant, and then we'll tell it that they are a person in their 40s, 30s, whatever. This variable here is the personal information, so expanding from that disk profile. This one here is talking about their day. This here specifies the type of call that it is. And now we're giving it the static message saying react accordingly to the person that you are and the day that you've just had as a result of this person giving you either a cold call or lead follow-up sort of call, you know? So that's a basic overview on this side of things. This is the case for the cold call, lead follow-up, and the objection handling coach. On this retail front end, we are actually able to do some of the call analysis that we implement on the later steps of the process. We actually count the objection handling, the conversion, and the talk to listen ratio, and I'll just show you this really quickly. The objection handling is the total result of handled objections from the salesperson against the total amount of prospect objections. So this is already part of the analytics that we get from the retail side of things, which just makes it easier. The conversion is a boolean of whether or not the AI was actually converted into a customer. And then talk to listen ratio is just a rough estimate of how much the salesperson talked compared to the AI. And there's just a couple more things that I want to show you. The first thing is this webhook that is triggered that we're sending all of the call analytics to. But the other webhook URL that I want to show you is this coach's webhook. So when we call that phone number on the Lovable side of things, it triggers this webhook here, which just happens to be this automation. So that's how that whole thing connects itself to the retail agent. But anyway, so once the call is done, we send all of that data that was gathered through here to this automation here. And what this automation does is it looks out for the event call analyzed. So whenever we have any call on retail, that webhook, so this webhook here is triggered 3 times. Once for when the phone call begins, once for when it's picked up, and once for when it's finished. And when it's finished, we get this call analyzed value here, which turns a transcript into a actual string that doesn't break the JSON. And then we are posting data to Relevance AI for the coach to analyze. So we could just have a Relevance AI webhook into the actual retail side of things, so over here. But I just thought it was easier from a credits perspective because Relevance AI charges you on credits, just to send exactly the information that I wanted it to send, which is the transcript, the user IDs that we send as metadata, which we get from this webhook call as well, and just this other information here. I don't know if that makes sense, but just from a cost perspective, I thought that this automation would be pretty helpful as well. So once we trigger this analytics coach, we can see that it received all of this information, which came from this scenario here. So we are sending it to one webhook, posting it over here, which is where we get the transcription, the script file URL, and and some of the results from the retail side of things. So the objections handled, the conversion, and the talk to listen ratio. So you can see it didn't do a good job here. But then we see that the agent performed 3 tools. One was script adherence, one was building the report building score, and then one was sending that information back to Supabase. So let me show you guys this. So the script adherence takes as input the transcript and the script file of the call that we just had. So once it receives the script file, we fetch that data and we turn it into actual text content. And then we feed it into this LLM here that evaluates the whole thing based off the transcript of that call, and then compares it against the actual script value that that salesperson was given. So then we say, you know, give it a score out from 0 to 100 based on how much they actually adhere to the script, and that's where we get that result from. Once we've done that, the agent uses the report building score, which again takes this transcript as input, and then we send it to an LLM to evaluate the report that the salesperson generated with the AI. And you can see in this prompt here, we give it a criteria, which comes straight off the book, so straight off Jordan Belfort's report building criteria. And it's evaluating it against the information here. So once we have these 2 pieces of information, we can send all of the data, both from retail and the ones that were built on Relevance AI, back to Supabase. So you can see the call duration, the conversion, talk to listen, all of these results, including the user ID, which if you remember at the start, we sent it as metadata. We are updating that user ID using this patch request to Supabase. And these are all the kind of records that we are updating. So we are changing the status from completed in Supabase to updated, which means that the evaluation was made by the agent. And these are all the fields that we are doing it for. So call duration, conversion, talk to listen, because before that, they didn't have any value because they weren't analyzed by the Relevance AI agent. Now that we have the analytics, we can then update all of that field back to Supabase over here in the call results tab, and this just gets filled in with all of this data from Relevance AI, which our Lovable can then transition into a nice looking dashboard or analytics tab. So going back to this Figma board here, we can see that we covered the Supabase side of things with the practice calls, profiles, the database schema, and the storage script. The database schema being the information that falls under that one user ID, the 2make.com scenarios that I used, and then the retail agents with the dynamic variables. And then how all of this data here gets sent to Relevance AI to then analyze, which then gets to this point here, so sent back to Supabase, and all the Lovable does is turn it into a nice looking interface from that point. So that's all for the tutorial today. As mentioned before, all the resources that I used to make this tool and all the agents and everything will be available to you for free in the resource below. Hopefully now you have a better idea of how you can implement different tools to make more complex workflows and build some cool stuff like this. If you're a business owner looking to implement complex solutions like these into your sales pipeline, then you're exactly the person that we help. And you can get in touch with us by booking a call with us directly using the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.